Happy holidays. Welcome to the FPL USA Press Play podcast. It's Bucks and Brian on for a Sunday night special. We want to wish you great cheer this holidays, and hopefully our podcast is contributing to some of the fun you're having every weekend. I know it's working out swell for you, Brian. How the hell are you?
Happy holidays, Bucks. It feels good to be a few days away from the celebrations with friends and family. Definitely going to enjoy having the rest of the week off after I cruise through. I have a really hectic Monday, so I'm not looking forward to that. But on the bright side, I was able to relax and watch a lot of football yesterday and today. So that's what it's all about. This festive period, we have more matches to come and more transfers to use because we've had some big news across the FPL landscape with Saka pulling his hamstring. We have no idea how long he's out for, but that will be a key part of this podcast. And we were going to be doing a deep dive into the midfielders. So I guess Saka gets a big lump of coal, but the rest of us will hopefully turn up with some extra presence from his replacement this upcoming few game weeks.
Yeah, the Grinch wears red this FPL time of the season. And whether you're celebrating Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, or Krampus, we want to definitely get you this recording before you travel to celebrate with those that you love. So that's why we're recording right after the game week ends on Sunday night. This episode will be up and live well before you do your Christmas and holiday travel. So with that, Brian, you're having a smashing start to the season. We're now just about halfway through game week 17 now in the books. How'd you turn out? What'd the score look like in game week 17?
No Krampus for my FPL team. Thankfully, there is no demon-like figure haunting my team because they've been very, very nice to me. I end up on another cheeky green arrow. I move from 46K overall to 30K overall. So a big rise considering the place that I'm at in the overall rankings. And I end up on 91 points. And I even benched Mikolenko 7 and Semenyo's 8. So it could have been better, but bad management. I will definitely take 91 points. And mainly, I've been getting very fortunate over the last 6 game weeks or so with Cunha and Isak. I moved early on Isak. That really helped. His price continues to rise. He puts in the hat trick. And thank goodness you jumped on board this game week 2, Bucks, because if you missed out on that hat trick, you're probably looking at a red arrow this week, unless, of course, you somehow started Morgan Rogers. So overall, feeling pretty spry about my team. And with the Saka news, it actually comes at a great time for me because I have 4 free transfers heading into this week, and I'll be able to finally jump on board on a few players that I've really been eyeing over the last couple game weeks. So all in all, it's turning up pretty spry for me, I have to say.
Yeah, team value is good. The OR is good. Your rank is brilliant.
The vibes are good.
Yeah, you have 4 free transfers when many managers are going to be looking at emergency hits. So the good news keeps coming for you, Brian. Now let's talk quickly about our missing in action co-host, Black Wolf. Dan took a hit this game week. He lands on 86 points all out. He's still in the messy middle of the 3 managers. He's ranked right around 775K in the world. And pulling up the rear, I am currently stuck in the chimney right now in my red suit, but I land on a green arrow, thankfully. I end up with 88 points, respectable. I'm about 1 million OR. I had about 200K green arrow this game week, and the big move was bring in Isak. I sold Semenyo and Solanke, brought in Isak, almost captained him, to be perfectly honest. Glad I didn't do that at the end of the game week.
Man. I mean, I saw a lot of folks, not a lot of folks, but a number of people who went differential and went for Isak, and I feel really bad for them because to get 34 points and still come up 8 points less than Salah captainers is pretty wild given the variance that we've seen there. But Saka the king, oh my goodness. Where does this man need to sign his new contract, Bucks? You've been calling for months.
Salah's going to be signed and a mainstay at Liverpool for at least another season, if not 2 more to come. He's in the best form of his career, actually, and he's really hauling and producing massive returns each and every time he steps on the Anfield pitch. And even when he's away, he's just dazzling on that right wing. They have no clear replacement to spell him for minutes. and he's having the best FPL output through 17 game weeks before Christmas of all time. So he's just massively in form right now, and the hair plugs are doing miracles. So that might be why Dan is missing from this episode. He might be planning his visit to Turkey and then for the new year.
I mean, the man might have gotten plugs to fill out that face of his with his beautiful beard, but we are missing Dan today, but he is enjoying himself with family. So we'll have to catch him hopefully on one of the upcoming podcasts. And yeah, Bucks, I mean, considering you brought Isak in for a couple of guys who scored points, I would say you had a pretty good game week, especially looking at a few of your other players around the peripherals that brought you points. So it's trending in the right direction, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, the big miss in my team, so to speak, I'm tripled up on the Chelsea attack. I was also bankrolling potential takeover of Everton Football Club with the amount of money that I had on the line in the wager department.
Yeah, man, I was going to be co-chairman with you of that board because we were very bullish on our Chelsea Blues today, and I got kicked right in the plums, man, right in the plums. This one hurt.
You think it hurt for you? Try 2xing that, and yeah, I might not need to go for a vasectomy after all. After the direct shot I took right to the crown jewels, because it was so painful today. I had too much money tied, and I had my heart and head also there with me. So it was just a triple whammy in the bad way. 3 strikes and you're out. And the good news for Everton, though, with the clean sheet and earning a well-deserved point hosting Chelsea, is that the takeover of Everton Football Club is now complete. That's another American ownership group in the Premier League. The Friedkin Group completes the move for $400 million. That's brilliant news if you're a supporter of the Toffees, the longest standing club in the Premier League, one of the OG football teams in world football. And yeah, brilliant news for them, but not as brilliant as the manager of the game week and their output in game week 17. Brian, who was that really smashed it?
Yeah, let's shout out Christopher Blair's squad. Keats Elite. He goes off for 110 points. Oh my goodness, what a crazy week. Salah captain for 42, Isak hat trick. Huijsen, the teenager from Bournemouth, puts in a 14-pointer. Cunha, Semenyo. Oh, this guy even had Rodgers on his bench and still put up 110. So well done. That's a common speed limit in kilometers in many countries, and he is speeding to the top of the ranks this week.
Yeah, brilliant performance, Christopher. Well-deserved shout-out with 110 points. Now, our mini league, we just should give some credit to the managers towards the top because, Brian, you're basically right around 30K, and you're not even cracking the top 10. So this has been a really competitive start to the Press Play Premiership. Kudos to all the managers who are still checking and involved with us. We have 500 of you sickos going for a free kit at the end of the season.
Hey, love that.
And, credit to managers like Christopher that are putting in a shift each and every game week to get the shout out, but also, marching right towards the top of the table. So it's been brilliant fun, and we hope that you get involved next season if you aren't already.
All right, that is a quick recap of our scores. We're going to take a quick break, and then we are going to just talk about some of the most important talking points from Game Week 17, and then look ahead at the Boxing Day fixtures. So many matches to open, so many boxes to see. Bucks. Oh my goodness, I can't wait. We have Christmas here for many people, and then Boxing Day footy. Let's effing go.
All right, we're back. Let's rewind and remix the action from game week 17. Remix, record scratch. Let's start at the top of the table. I think deservedly so. Liverpool, clear and away, the best team in the Premier League, and they continue their march of dominance in the league. 6-3, a 9-goal thriller against the Spuds. I can't even say mean stuff about them. They're so down in the dumps right now.
Yeah, I mean, they're fielding five, or they're missing five out of their six starting defenders, and it's not been pretty. It's not been pretty. They've been leaking goals and will probably continue to do so. They're just such a up and down team. But for entertainment value, every match they play in, there's something. It's never just a 0-0. It's always either a 5-0 match or they're playing down a man and still putting up goals. It's chaos. But Mo Salah, enough said, right? He is so in scintillating form. He's the first player ever before Christmas to have 10 goals and 10 real assists in the Premier League. We're not even talking FPL assists. He has been setting up his teammates and soaking up all the bonus points. Oh my goodness. Absolute monster changes to the BPS system this year, and he gets another 3 points. Oh, truly incredible. 42 points if you captain him.
Yeah, another game week and another double-digit haul for Mo. The king is well and truly back for FPL fans, and he's from Egypt. And he might have a little bit shorter hair, but he's way long on the points this season, and he is just doing it each and every game week. 21 points, 2 goals, 2 assists, 3 bonus points. But he wasn't the only Liverpool player that was hauling here because, like you mentioned, Brian, the Spurs defense was so leaky. You could have parked the Merseyside Derby swimming pool in the middle of that defense, and they would have scored a goal. That's how wide open they were. Sazbalai, he gets a goal, 3 assists. He gets a yellow card, still gets 2 bonus points. He was on an insane 2.3 XGI, and that means
That's
expected
crazy.
goal involvement. So he was here, he was there, he was everywhere, putting the ball into the back of the net. 17 points for FPL managers. Now, I just want to mention him because I was pretty hot to trot on Jota. I was like, I'm going to get Jota, and he seems like a guy to get for the next little
Yeah,
bit of a run.
that was your question on the pod last week for our hashtag FPL community questions that Dan and I jumped into with Raptor.
Yeah, and you guys gave me some good feedback because Jota nowhere to be found in the starting lineup. Sazbalai looks like the differential man to own in reality, and then the other guy contending for the spot, Luis Diaz, also pours in with 13 points, 2 goals, and 1 bonus point. So just brilliant all around from the Liverpool attack. And yeah, Spurs made it interesting late, but I think the 6-3 scoreline is pretty flattering. This was a dominant victory from Arne Slot's guys.
I'm not going to lie, this was a perfect match for me because I am a non-Trent owner. I've been putting that off for many moons. He gets the early assist, a beautiful cross over to a header from Luis Diaz, who scores his first goal since September when he was in Fuego. So he needed that one to get off the schneid. And I was like, oh man, Trent could get in with a goal and assist. He could be on an 18-pointer this week. And then, unfortunately, they're up by so many goals, they're just not really paying as much attention. And then Matto gets a sneaky goal in the first half and then 2 more goals. So Trent only ends up on 4 points in this one, which I think was pretty unlucky. He played very well. But I, again, have just been on the other side of that luck and have been dodging him most of the season since my wild card. So he's a prime candidate to come back in with Leicester at home. But like you said, it's very confusing on who your second or third Liverpool player could be. I don't know what's going to happen in the midweek fixtures, Bucks. Like, what do you expect the formation to be? I think you have to definitely chat with some of your Liverpool fans. Will Nunez come back in for that one? I mean, it probably makes sense. He came in on the 87th minute today, so full rest for him. They're playing a very easy opponent in Leicester at home. You would think Darwin would come in, but then who plays on the left? Is Diaz or Gakpo going to play there? It's just a bit of a mess, to be honest.
Well, I actually wonder if this is finally the game week we see Mo Salah rested. And I wonder if they just run out Gakpo,
Oh, don't do
Nunez,
it to
and
me.
Luis Diaz as a front three, because the way Leicester are conceding goals, they made Wolves look like the Galacticos in this game week, just shipping goals left, right, and center. So, yeah, I think there's going to be a rotation coming from Salah, and I think Liverpool have tons in the bag that they could beat Leicester with one of their arms tied behind their back. But with that, they're not the only team that put up a big number in the goal scoring department. So let's transition to talk next about Arsenal, who also hung a 5 spot against Crystal Palace. Now, this is another dominant performance, but Palace did have some moments. But I think the big news is something you teased in the opener, and that's Saka going down. Looks like a pretty bad hamstring injury. Comes off in the opening 30 minutes, cannot continue. And he's seen leaving the stadium with pretty significant limp on crutches. So might be a pretty bad one. Any initial takeaway from that injury?
I think you have to remove him from your FPL team, just given that the deadlines are coming so fast and very little information is going to be shared from managers. You just have to move on from him, and then later on, when he's healthy, consider to bring him back in. But it looked pretty bad. I mean, he usually tries to limp around a little bit, and this was instantly. He knew he had really pulled it pretty badly. I'm not a doctor or one of those FPL physios on X just diagnosing folks, but I would assume that there's just no reason to risk him when he's so important to their long-term efforts, especially when you're thinking about Champions League later in the season as well. So they need to get right, and it really helps that Gabriel Jesus has somehow found his boots again. He comes in with 5 goals this week versus Crystal Palace. I mean, what a week. And he should have hat-tricked in both games. He had a couple big chances that he missed. He's 6.7 million playing at home versus Ipswich. It could be a punt there. But Arsenal are just such an up and down team from an attacking perspective lately. Like they score goals in the league or in Champions League, then they blank against Everton, and they've had a few just interesting performances. But you would assume this Ipswich fixture is another opportunity to score at least 4 goals even without Saka, right?
Yeah, I would say so. And watching that game, it was actually interesting. When Saka came off, they almost were a little more fluid in attack. Now, I'm not the biggest Saka truther, but he is a brilliant player, and he is the star of that Arsenal attack. But Gabby Jesus, Crystal Palace might have to put him on their naughty list the way he was torturing them this game week. He had 16 points in FPL, 2 goals, 1 assist, and 3 bonus. And
Yeah, I
like
mean,
you said, he also
if you're Palace, you would have thought that he was wearing green and he was the fucking Grinch. I mean, oh my goodness, what is he doing to these poor Crystal Palace fans for in multiple matches? You're just
twisted
going
the
home.
knife. He had a hat trick in midweek. I mean, the Crystal Palace players, they have families. Jesus, come on, go easy on them.
Oh my goodness, yeah, huge performance from him. So we'll see who's going to step up. Odegaard will be on penance, probably take some more corner kicks potentially. Declan Rice started on the bench this game, so yeah, there's some set pieces up for grabs. So I'm very curious to see if Odegaard steps into the fold. He's 8.3 million, and somebody that we'll talk a little bit about later when we're looking at Saka replacements. But I would say Ipswich at home is such a huge match, and anybody who had Gabriel right back in the side gets a little cheeky FPL assist. His header goes off the bar. Just avoided another monster 10 plus point performance from him too. So you have your Arsenal assets. You're still sitting pretty. Nothing too stressful over the next couple game weeks until the schedule gets a little bit more difficult.
So true. Let's talk about 2 more matches before we flip the script and look ahead to game week 18. Newcastle, they go to the Tractor Boys and they mowed them down 4-0. This was an Isak. This was basically training pitch fodder for him. I mean, that second goal specifically was like so brutal to watch if you're an Ipswich fan. They're down 2-0 right before halftime. They try and pass it out from the back, and they let Isak score. I mean, he could have scored that if there were 100 Ipswich players and fans blocking the goal. It was so easy.
I mean,
And
how many times are we going to see the newly promoted teams, Southampton, Ipswich, Leicester, and then like Wolves have tried to play out of the back consistently this season and just give away these just easy goals to, I feel like Isak was like half-assing his press, and he still ends up like right next to the goal. He looks one way and just puts that second goal in. He missed a one-on-one too. He's had obviously some big double-digit hauls, but I feel like he should have been on quad returns in back-to-back matches versus these promoted teams.
yeah, he looked brilliant. That was a very well-deserved hat trick. 17 points for FPL managers because he gets the 3 bonus. But a player that's flying massively under the radar right now, he didn't even get a mention last week with Raptor in the budget department, is Jacob
Very
Murphy.
true.
Now, he's not the most secure for minutes. He often does get rotated around the 65th, 70th minute. That's kind of Eddie Howe's go-to move. But he gets another 13-point output, a goal, assist, clean sheet, and 2 bonus points. It's his second straight 13-point performance. He had a 7-point performance in the game previous. He's only 4.9 million. So he could be a really tempting option if you're willing to take a little bit of a risk. Go Saka down to Murphy. You could splash the cash on multiple moves elsewhere in your team. So he's one to watch. I think he's on my watch list since I have a very low team value. I wanted to just ask if he's at all a player that you're curious about, Brian.
Yeah, he's somebody on the watch list, not somebody that I will be going for, but like you said, he had 7 points versus Brentford, 13 points against Leicester, and then 13 points against Ipswich, and is linking up really well, especially for the chances on the break that Isak is creating, and then just the form and the confidence in the player. I mean, he dribbled through 4 little tractors and did a back heel flick to Isak that was absurd, and then Isak's just all instincts slots home a very, very cheeky goal. It was very impressive from Newcastle. And it's good to see them gain form because I do like their FPL assets. You have Hall. He's been doing really well for you the last couple of game weeks. And then you think about somebody like Gordon. I think Anthony Gordon he's a player that had 27 returns last season. He's only had 7, I think. He's on like 4 assists and 3 goals. I expect a few goal type performances from him coming up in this stretch as well. So Newcastle guys are definitely ones to consider for upcoming transfers. Even with their fixtures, I just think they're in a good moment right now and can play pretty well against anybody, especially if they're at home.
Totally agree. They're a team that's on the ascension at this point in the season. Now, let's talk about a team that gets a much needed new manager bounce, and we'll close out the recap with Dan's Wolves. Now, he's not here, so I will howl at the moon in his honor. Ooh! But it was finally time that he's howling and not whimpering because Wolves get it done 3-0. They were the alpha dogs in this matchup between the Wolves and the Foxes, and they just kicked the shit out of the Van Nistel nothings of Leicester. And the main man
Van
is
Nistelrooy wants
Cunha.
to play a very attacking football, and he's going to have to try and shore up his defense a little bit. He's going to have to definitely just adjust to the personnel that he has because that team is not set up to go all out attack, and they were exposed numerous times, which is unfortunate because this is potentially a 6-point matchup with the Wolves fighting for their lives in the future relegation battle with the likes of Leicester. So big win. I'm happy for Dan. He will have a very Merry Christmas because of this W that he desperately needed to, because now they have some rough fixtures coming up.
Yeah, this was a big must-win kind of moment, but I think the big takeaway for me is that Cunha is just a bonus points magnet. He's clearly the main man at Wolverhampton, and he's the second highest scoring forward in the game behind one Erling Haaland. So kudos to you, Brian.
Wow.
Kudos to Black Wolf. I know both of
I
you
did not
went
know
there
that.
early. Yeah, he gets another 9 points. I'm still Cunha-less, and that's part of why my rank has not rocketed up the way that you guys have. So
Womp womp.
brilliant to anyone who went there. He's owned up, I think, 26% of the managers in the game, and the percentage is even higher in the top 10K, so that truly elite level manager. And Brian, that's part of the reason you're knocking on that door right now is all those points Cunha's found for you.
And I would say for us, we have discussed with Dan, and he does think that the ban is going to be coming from the FA probably before the Boxing Day deadline. So again, watch this space. He's a player that's still in my front line. I'm not going to move him until he gets that officially confirmed. His next matchup, I believe, is against Manchester United, who just shipped 3 goals to Bournemouth. And honestly, I would be happy to start Cunha in that one as well because he only needs 1 or 2 chances, and he's been clinically finishing and getting 9-pointers. So Watch the
Oh
space, and
yeah.
you'll see.
Oh yeah. You'd be happy to start the
Yeah,
7 million second top goal scorer
sure.
forward
I
option.
could do it. I
Yeah.
can do it.
Wow, bro. Way to break news on this podcast. It is such bullshit that he started this game. Sorry for my cursing. Hopefully your kids are not in the car with you as you're
Oh, come
listening.
on. Let the expletives fly, Bucks. I know you were on one about this.
What a ridiculous miscarriage, corruption, justice. I mean, listen, Wolves can't buy a bottom nickel from the VAR and the PGMO types, but the FA, I mean, to let them have their best player for a must-win relegation battle like this, when he so clearly got the ban. He has the ban. It's been levied. They just haven't weighed in with the punishment. I mean, that is such utter bullshit. And the fact is, Cunha is amazing at grabbing glasses, but he's equally amazing at grabbing goals. So this guy should have been grabbing a seat in the stands in this match. So the fact that he gets a 9-pointer for you, for Dan, gets Wolves, helps them secure the 3 points. That is utter nonsense. I am not here for it. Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit.
All right. With that rant, let's end that segment and fast forward to game week 18 after this break.
All right, I've calmed down. I took a deep breath. Let's fast forward and look ahead at the matches to target for festive FPL hauls. And again, we should just remind the listeners this is going to be a Thursday deadline. There's midweek footy, thanks in large part to the Boxing Day festivities in the Premier League. So there will be no Christmas footy. Again, the Premier League has learned their lesson from last season when they made Chelsea play Wolves on the night before Christmas. They stranded 6,000 away fans up in the shithole of Wolverhampton. And that won't be happening again this season, thank God. So let's talk about the matches and where the FPL points are going to rain down like presents from the trees above.
All right, let's take a look. First, I would say Leicester at Liverpool is a match where I would love to have a triple up. And even if it would cost me future transfers, if I was going to use the ass man chip on Arnie Slot, this one should be a 5-0 thrashing. Gotta be, right? Even if you're hungover after Christmas, whoever the Liverpoolians trot out are going to score goals in this one. What's your prediction there?
Yeah, I agree. I think this is the clear least versus the most. I think this is 4-0 to the home team. And one thing you're going to note about the fixtures this week is that most of the favorites do play at home. So this is a great game week for home cooking in the FPL community because a lot of the most popular players, the top performing assets, will have home fixtures. So that's something to note, especially for defenses. So I think this could be an interesting match. If you think Salah's going to get rested, I actually think Trent has a real chance to be the top scoring captaincy option.
Ooh, wow.
Because
That's a bold
Leicester,
take.
they stink.
That's a bold take for sure. All right, next up, Ipswich at Arsenal. First game without Saka, very highly likely there. Arsenal just absolutely humming in a away victory in London at Selhurst Park versus Palace. You would assume that the good fortunes would favor Arsenal in this one to score minimum 3 goals. But will they keep the clean sheet? Because I still have double defense. I would like the 6-pointers to come in for Raya and Gabby.
I think it's going to be 3-1 to Arsenal. I think Delap will be
a
back
hungover
fit.
goal.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be kind of a meaningless. They're up 2-0 and they just lose focus for a moment. They concede a goal and then they get back right back in the goals. They get right back on it and they score a third. So I think Arsenal cruise to an easy victory here, but I'm not sure they're going to keep a clean sheet.
All right, let's transition to the best IRL matches. And Villa play at Newcastle. We saw a great performance from Morgan Rogers. A lot of people sold him. He was one of the highest sold assets this past weekend, and he comes in with a 14-pointer. Really a player who is growing into his own. Again, this is the first season where he's playing major, massive minutes for Villa, and he chimes in with a goal and assist versus City. And The goal that he finished, it was just such a great build-up play. He carried the
Wonder
ball
goal. I agree.
for 60 yards against four different City defenders, leaving them in the dust with the strength, the ball handling. Then add the vision to that, and then he slots in probably his best finish of the season with a left-footed shot. So anybody who started him truly deserved to get those 14 points this weekend. Unfortunately, with these cheap guys, you're sometimes going to bench points, and you just have to be hopeful that next time when you call on his number into your squad that he delivers then. But this one's very interesting with Newcastle, I would say, in top scoring form. We don't know if Ollie Watkins is going to be back, so it's going to be more of Duran and Watkins and not Watkins and Rogers. So what's your prediction here? Goal fest?
Yeah, I think there are goals here. I think it's 3-2 to the home team. I think that if Newcastle was traveling to Villa, I'd have the scoreline reversed. But I think the St. James advantage after Christmas, the Gordies are going to show up. They're going to show up in
The
force.
Gordies.
They're going to be a little drunk. They might not be wearing clothes despite it being freezing cold and maybe even raining. And this is a game I will for sure be watching as a neutral because I think it's going to be brilliant. And both these teams have their eyes set on Champions League spots for next season. Now, we've talked already about how we think Villa are more focused on Champions League this season than they are on the Premier League, but they can't take their eye off too far because they're starting to lose ground on touching the top four places. And Newcastle also, they had a mid-early season wobble. So both these teams need to get right with some back-to-back 3-point performances. So I think Newcastle have enough, but I think there's going to be at minimum 4 goals in this game. And Duran is he the new number one starter for Villa? Because seems like every time he plays, he scores a banger of a goal. I love him.
Yeah, he's a top talent. He's going to fetch a very, very high value in the transfer market one day, especially because it does seem that they've committed to Ollie Watkins to continue to lead the line there. But if they could ever figure out a way to pair each other and play two up top, that could be interesting. But he's not an FPL pick, unfortunately, at all.
Really, I was going to ask you that. I think he's on my watch list. He keeps starting. He's going to be coming into the Bucks' team pretty soon. Let's go to the last match.
Watkins didn't feature at all, though, right? This weekend?
I don't think so. But
yeah.
I think
if he were to be out for a number of weeks, like a month, then maybe for sure I would be interested in him. But they're going to split a lot of time there.
Yeah, the big issue is the system for Emery because he's all about packing the middle of the pitch. And that's why you don't really see 2 up top because he wants to have that extra man in the middle. But really, with the construction of this team, it's almost like it's cruel that they don't play like kind of a 3 up top with Morgan Rogers sitting at that number 10 behind Duran and Watkins because they really do have explosive talent in the attack. It's kind of being wasted with Tielemans and McGinn, and those guys stink.
All right, next up, let's talk about Tottenham at NFO. Forest continue to climb in the rankings, and I was seeing some posts that they've already won more Premier League matches this season than they have the last 2 seasons, each of 2022 to 2023 and 23 to 24. Truly incredible. Good for them. Nuno has them humming. They're cleaning the sheets. Wood, very unlucky not to score. He had a big chance that gets blocked off the line this past weekend. Looks to be a solid asset. So, what do you think? This one could go either way, really.
Oh, I think this is going to be the opposite kind of match that Tottenham want to play, which is wide open. Forest really slow and shut games down. I think this is going to be 2-1 to the hosts. And Forest have been the sneaky surprise team this season. They are making a really strong push to have a top 4 finish. That'll be their first time back in the Champions League. Since I think before my parents were born, it's been so long that they've been a suffering middling club, but they were kind of the OG big club from the Premier League when the Champions League first really got going. And like you said, I think they already have more points this season than they did all of last season. Nuno has this team clicking, and Ola Aina was the star in game week 17.
Whew.
I think he could get another clean sheet in this one. But I actually think that Kulusevski nicks one back when they're 2-0 down. Maybe Ange will be employed going into the new year, but I don't really see it. I think he's on the hot seat in a big way.
I see this one as a 2-2 draw. I think we've seen enough attacking prowess from Tottenham.
Spicy.
They just hung up 3 on Liverpool, and they just have
Did
the
they?
right talent in the attackers spots. So anyway,
Did they hang the 3? Did they hang the 3, or was kind of the whole house was shook up and they just picked 2 easy ones off the floor and put it back on the hook?
You tell me. You're a Trent owner. They're fucking around and finding out. They lackadaisical. They don't really get that many clean sheets for as good as Liverpool is. So
Yeah,
I'm just
I
saying,
don't think they're the best.
They scored the 3. They scored the 3 goals. So it's annoying for fantasy. I'm talking
Humbug.
Fantasy, baby.
Yeah,
all right.
I think
let's move it on. We got
real life
dinner
is
dinner to
more
jump
important.
too soon. All right, let's jump to our hashtag FPL community questions. And wow, we got a good mailbag today. Obviously, Saka is at the heart of that. So let's start out here with the question from FPL Hugo. He asks, what are the best Saka replacements? And then to second that, we also had at FPL_Hunt, friend of the show, Connor. He wants to ask for our thoughts on Diaz as a Saka replacement. He only has 7.5 million. So let's start there, Bucks. What are your plans to do with Bukayo Saka, assuming he is definitely going to be out?
Yeah, so I think there's really 3 names that jump off the list. I think it's Bruno, Martin Odegaard, and then Jared Bowen. And Bowen is kind of the major one in left field because he's playing a false 9 right now. West Ham, the fixtures, they play Southampton next. So, I mean, that's the real match to target. Might be a slightly short-term move. But I think Bruno is probably the safest pick. Now, the most upside chasing pick is some of those Liverpool guys that Connor is mentioning. So I think Diaz, if I knew he was going to start and play 75 minutes against Leicester, he'd for sure be coming in. But I actually like the idea, especially if you have multiple free transfers, maybe think about redistributing the funds from Saka. So go down to a player like Madison, like Mbomo, like Luis Diaz, and then make sure you have a guy like Isak in your front line or a guy like Trent in your defense, because I think those guys are going to come good with even more big point returns. So I think the big takeaway is not really who I think the priority midfielder is. I think it's where do you have a hole elsewhere in your team to get like the guy. And I think right now Isak and Trent are pretty clear as the 2 guys that you'll want to have filling up your team. How about you, Brian? What's your take?
Yeah, I like where you're coming from. I think with the fixture pileup, those expected minutes usually lead to points, and I do really favor Bruno when I was looking a little bit further into this for my replacement in my team for Saka. Odegaard is interesting. He will be on those penalty kicks, probably some more free kicks, but his open goal threat is pretty poor. And so that part really kind of throws me. And eventually, if you want Saka back in your side and you're already doubled up on their defense, then you're going to have to use a sideways transfer to bring in Saka over Odegaard. And I don't love that for the time being. So I think the best punt probably is GW18, which is not a long-term punt, but he seems to be in a little bit better form, possibly as a third asset from Arsenal. Other than that, I think Anthony Gordon is somebody that I just see him being on some corners, open play threat. Isak is humming. They have a good connection. He's had a couple of shots that had great saves by the opponent's goalkeepers. So he's somebody that could be on the rise soon. And I know our guy Connor Hunt is all about Gordon right now. So those are some good options. But if you could nail the Liverpool midfielder, I think if you go there, you just have to know that they're going to play 25 minutes in one of these next 3 upcoming fixtures, and you're just going to have to take that on the chin, literally.
Yeah, and Chin won't be taking it on the chin because everything he does in FPL this season turns to gold. Now, one more name I just want to throw out there is Phil Foden. Now, the Manchester City attack hasn't been what it has been in years past or in stretches past, but Foden finally came good with a goal against Villa. Now, it wasn't in a winning effort. They still lost 2-1. He could be an interesting option based on fixtures alone. Now, surely Manchester City are going to get back to winning and scoring goals because they have elite talent in Holland leading the line. But I just wonder if Foden, he's still pretty expensive. So I almost would prefer skipping him, going down to a guy as far down as Bruno or even lower down like a Diaz and get 2 upgrades rather than just 1. So that's my 2 cents on Foden. I don't think he's a legitimate option. I could be burnt by that in a couple game weeks' time. We'll see.
Yeah, I agree with you. They're going to have fantastic fixtures, and it's one of those things where we want the Foden of last year, and there's no resemblance of that player yet this season. So, on top of Manchester City just being absolute dog bleep, so there's no way I would go Foden, and he's super expensive. So, I guess my last question for you is, you're looking at the midfielders at Tottenham. You have Son, Kulu, Matto. Any love for any of those guys? I mean, Madison continues to deliver tons and tons of FPL points, but you just are still unsure if he's going to start every match for Ange.
I like it, but I don't love the jumping on point with Forest away. And so I think that's what's really putting me off. I think that if you were in a position of luxury where you're not necessarily selling Saka this game week, then I would think about Son as just a straight swap. But I think it's just really hard to justify that going into what I think to be like a 4 on the FDR in Forest away. I don't think that's an optimal match for goals or for attackers. So because of that, I'm kind of put off on the move in the short term.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I think right now Matto is 5th in expected goal involvement for the season, behind Salah, Palmer, Saka, and Bruno. So he's right there in the top 5. Somebody that could come good, but not for us. We are going to support the Chelsea Blues and not bring any Tottenham assets into our sides.
Amen to that. Let's go to the next question from FPL Theorist. He's asking about just going with 3 budget mids and just resounding to play 2 of them each and every game week. Now, I want to give Theorist credit because I was thinking about this, but unfortunately, based on my move last week to bring in Bergvall, who's now a dead player in my front 8, I'm kind of boxed out of doing that move. Now, I think if you are in a position where you have more than 2 free transfers saved, I actually really like this idea. Maybe get a player like Sar from Crystal Palace, who has great fixtures coming up. Put them next to a guy like Rogers and either Enzo and Ahmad. You just play 2 of them, and you're benching one. Kind of removes a lot of the headache of picking a front 8. So I like that. And then you could really afford to get a trio up front of like Cunha, Solanke, and Isak, or Cunha, Jackson, and Isak, and still have money left over to upgrade in future game weeks. So I really rate this strategy, especially with Arsenal not delivering tons of open play goals. It could be an interesting way to fade them with these festive fixtures.
Yeah, it's an interesting proposition to be in because a lot of us have João Pedro in our sides. He took 0 shots in this last game, and we are consistently starting him knowing that he's on pens. And historically, Brighton have been pretty attacking, but right now, without Welbeck in the side, he's not getting very many chances, and Brighton just look listless. I hate watching Brighton right now. So when you're thinking about
We love to
those
hate
cheap,
them, though, Brian. Sorry to
fuck
cut
that
you
team,
off.
man. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Yeah. Anyway, I self inflicted wounds right there because I have João Pedro and I have Van Heck, which has just been such a bad move for me. One of the worst moves I've had of the season to bring him in overhaul. But I digress. Anyway, the other player that you mentioned too is Murphy as well. So there are a good amount of assets. I think it's just hard for us to figure out who to start in that sub 6 million kind of bracket over the likes of a Raul Jimenez, who's supposed to be on pens, or João Pedro. So we just have to get past that point, and then maybe just strike gold when the fixtures are really, really hot. But I like that theorist. I think if we were in a world where Holland ever comes back into form, I think we're feeling confident that we could pick multiple £5 million assets in the attack and enable that. So, yeah, it's a way you can go if you need those funds.
Yeah, and I want to mention and shout out as a low team value manager. Um, if and when Holland comes back in for many teams, we're going to be scrounging for every loose penny. And right now, Jacob Murphy still 4.9 million. I don't expect he's going to be sub 5 million for long. Same way Morgan Rogers, Enzo, and Ahmad all have risen in price quite drastically since they've started to come good because they're offering huge outsized return on top of what their budget price is. So that's really what makes this appealing.
Yeah, and then Chef Man 7979, he wants to just go a little bit deeper there. What are your thoughts on Sar? Is he a good punt for Crystal Palace, who right now Eze and Mateta are playing 60 minutes? Eze is injured, but Sar is the one who is getting really far forward, and he overlaps quite nicely on the Munoz side of the pitch. So even though they just got thrashed, obviously they played a very informed Arsenal that day. He scores a goal. So curious on your thoughts on Sar.
Yeah, he's first choice ahead of Nketiah, and it's not even close right now. I think when Palace have their full front three healthy, it will be Mateta leading the line, Sar on one side, Eze on the other as kind of two support attacking midfield number 10s. And Sar's in great form. He has had stretches like this in his previous career as a Watford player. So I think he's a good get. And the Palace fixtures coming up are quite enticing. So he's definitely someone who's on my watch list. Now, the issue is it's kind of like hard to predict a player like that when they're going to have returns, right? Because he doesn't take any set pieces
Yeah, it's all
and he's
open
kind
threat.
of like an all or nothing kind of player. It's either going to be a 2-pointer or a 7-pointer most game weeks. So that's what makes him really tough to predict. He's not really a guy who gets too many assists either. It's really he's going to get the goal or he's going to get kind of diddly squat.
Yeah, fair enough. I think he's a very similar player profile to Semenyo, kind of in that 5 to 6 million pound bracket. You're going to get a goal here and there, but the confidence level it seems more like a punt. And if I'm going to go for a punt, I'll just save that 500,000 and go all the way down and go cheaper. So that's just kind of where I'm at this point in time. All right,
I second that.
next up we have a question from Steinbergler. My guy Stein, want to shout him out, and my friend Alec. They're both in some of our FPL mini leagues, and I met up for them for our multicultural elephant party, which was a good time. Had about 30 of us there, and traded out some gifts. We don't need to call it a white elephant everywhere we go, Bucks. He wants to
I'm
know
staying away from that. I don't want to get canceled in my Brooklyn neighborhood.
Is Trent the closest, most essential defender? So, is it time for Trent to bag some points? This home fixture versus Leicester, I think maybe 2 or 3 seasons ago, he had like a 24-pointer versus Leicester during this time frame of the holiday spirit. So, I'm definitely eyeing him. I think if I can go from Saka down to Bruno and one of my defenders up to Trent, now is the time because he's gaining in popularity. The defense, though, until Konate comes back, I'm just not as sold on it. But I think you're really just hoping to bag one of these 15 pointers and playing Leicester at home, and then maybe get an early sub and just get your 15 points, get your 12-pointer, and sub off at 65 minutes and call it a day. What are your thoughts here on Trent?
Yeah, he has great upside, but I actually don't think he's the most essential defender. I think that title still goes to Gabriel at Arsenal. He's the number one goal
Right
threat
on.
of any defender in the Premier League, and he's actually adding some cheeky FPL assists this season. And I just think that by far and away, Arsenal are the best defense in the league. So I'm sitting here with just Gabriel in my defense. Every time Arsenal are looking like keeping a clean sheet, that just hits me right in the plums in the FPL rank. So I think the optimal defense is to get Gabriel, Gvardiol, and Trent with Raya in goal
Vardiol. Whoa.
because he's an attacking demon. Josko is. He has 4 goals on the season already. But I think the second most optimal is just to do 2 Arsenal guys alongside Trent. Now, I know that's hard to stomach, but with Saka being out, that's going to free up funds for many FPL managers. So there will be a discount at the defender shop with none of these clean sheets hitting. So I think it's a great time to go and buy Trent. He hasn't come good with any of these massive double-digit hauls yet, but they are coming, especially if you trust the advanced stats and what the analyticos are predicting. I think before the end of the new year, he gets a double-digit return.
Leicester, West Ham, Manchester United. These are pretty good fixtures for Liverpool. So I would expect at least one double-digit haul is coming to a FPL screen near you. All right. Lastly, let's end on a question from @myCayman aka Matt. He wishes us happy holidays. And what are our thoughts on the best sub 6 million forward for the remaining fixtures during the festive period? Bucks. All our forwards have kind of dried up recently, especially with Raul getting benched a couple of these latest matches, which is something we called out and talked about on the pod recently. Hence why I was not touting him at all. João Pedro, his points have dried up. Is it better just to start one of those cheap midfielders instead of that slot and go 3-5-2? What do you think?
I think you still have to keep the faith if you have João Pedro, like many do in the community. He's still on pens, and on their day,
Brentford
Brighton
at home
like,
too. They're playing Brentford.
yeah,
so
they're playing Brentford away. So Brentford away are a totally different team than they are at home. They have arguably the worst defense on the road in the league. And so I think this is a perfect get right game for him. So I wouldn't rush to bin him just yet. But I actually, like I shouted out earlier, I think Duran is emerging as the kind of cheap enabler attacker to go for. Now, especially as we have other more secure options in midfield, if you know Duran is getting 60 minutes, I almost feel like you can pencil in a 6-pointer for him. He's just that explosive when he's leading the line for Villa. And Villa are still a really good attack and a very solid team. So he's my pick. I think he's 5.8 million right now. He probably will end up being 6 million by the time the holidays roll around. So he's my pick, and he's all mine right now. I backed him in challenge.
yeah.
I backed him in the bets. He was one of the only things that came good for me this game week.
Yeah, I just don't love him at the moment just because of the minutes exchange with Watkins. But the forward slots, I think if you're, especially because I would assume that Matt has Saka, like use some of those funds and get Nico Jackson or get Isak or maybe, look at Chris Wood. I think you should upgrade there if you want to play in a 3-4-3. If you're going to change formation, then you can go down and you can get one of these guys that are cheap and just have them be your first bench. It really depends how you're set up, but I'm not seeing a lot of faith right now in those guys. I mean, Delap is dried up. Evan Nilsson isn't scoring points. Vardy he's got some decent fixtures coming up, but he's an old head, so it's tough. It's tough out there.
We should just say, are we sure Watkins is still better than Duran? I mean, I know Watkins is coming off his best ever season, but he also played in the Euros. He's playing in Champions League. The guy is just being ran ragged. I mean, he's Saka 2.0, but he's, I think, 6 years older than him. So I'm just a little concerned right now, and I think that if Emery is being honest with himself, Duran is just the better striker right now. He has better legs, and he's putting in more of a shift than Watkins is based on current form.
I mean, he's scoring the goals, but he's not doing the rest of the things that Ollie Watkins can do in the press and in the build-up. So I just don't see that transition happening mid-season, right? Like that could be something that happens in the off-season. So I'm not with you on the shout quite yet, but if Watkins is going to be injured, then he's straight into my side. I do see the value there and his overall potential for sure. And that wraps up our community questions. Bucks, let's take our last break, and then when we come back, we're just going to quickly touch on our captaincy plans, our transfer plans, and captaincy shouts. We'll be right back.
Let's shout it from the rooftop. We are back. Let's close out this episode as strong as it's been so far with our transfer plans and captaincy shouts. Now, Brian, I'm going to give the mic to you. I think you're the one who's really setting the pace on this podcast this season. And,
Trailblazer.
Yeah, you're only a cool 970K spots higher than I am at this point in the
Oh
season.
man,
So
that's
let's give the listeners maybe their last 5 minutes back when it switches to me, and they could just sign off the episode early, get back to their family, and wrapping presents.
it's
What
been a
is your
very
plan?
very lucky 2024 for me. A lot of good things happening in my life, and it's carrying
Amen.
over to
Long may it
FPL. So
continue.
yeah, that's right. So for me, I have 4 free transfers and a few holes right now that I'm looking to fill. One of those being Van Heck. He has been just a terrible, terrible move. I cannot believe I did not go for Hall when those fixtures lined up. And it's really something that I'm going to try and learn from for the rest of the season. I want to get a little bit more attacking threat in my cheap defenders. So looking like Robinson, Munoz, Hall, those types of players. Because watching Van Heck every game for Brighton has been fucking miserable for about these past 4 weeks. So I'm going to upgrade him to Trent and kind of it's also a little bit of a shield at my rank tier. Like he's a player that maybe he's like sub 25% overall ownership, but a lot of folks are going to be on him this week, so that's a move for me. And then I'm going to move the likes of Saka to Bruno to help fund that, and then I have to use one more transfer I think this week to make that all happen. So I will be using 3 out of my 4 transfers. I'm waiting on Cunha. Cunha will probably again. I'm just going to be boring and probably go to Wood, but I am interested in Gabby Jesus, but that's just a flash in the pan thing. You're hoping for a brace, and then you're going to have to transfer him out, and I want those X-Min guys. So Chris Wood, he can do a job. He can come back into my side after I had a really nice fling with him in the forest of NFO earlier in the season. So that's me. In a good spot though, with 3 free transfers and want to roll. I want to start rolling again and be in a position where I have 2 to 3 free transfers each game week, because that's really helped my ascent up the rankings. So that's me for this week. You rate that all bucks? Makes sense, right?
Yeah, I really do. I think you're in a position of luxury with the 4 transfers banked. I wish I was in a similar position, and I think that if anything, I would think about taking the Gabby J punt because you do have that extra free transfer, and at your rank, that could be a mega differential if he comes good. And I also just think that he's secure for minutes at this point because Raz is being left out of the squad. So there's enough space for Havertz and Gabby J to both find spots in the starting 11 without any real true competition there. So I rate it.
Yeah, it's a punt. I think it's just more so it's going to cost 4 points, essentially 1 transfer in, 1 transfer out, and that part I don't love. I'm trying to just be a little more patient this year and not move off from pick to pick. So the other route would be to switch to like a 3-5-2. So I am curious. I have Mbomo and Semenyo and Saka. Those are 3 slots I could really play around with and get interesting. So, there are players that I'm also eyeing up in the midfield to possibly go differential and switch formations. But yeah, I think Trent is going to be one of the biggest and most popular players coming in to a lot of those teams. So I think I have to go there first and then figure out if I need to go dirt cheap. But it's really Trent or Jackson right now for me. Like, what are your thoughts on Nico Jackson versus Trent? Like, who's going to score more points in the next 5 game weeks?
And that's a harder time frame. I think Jackson is very secure on minutes. He's clearly the preferred starter. And I think the fixtures are just continue to line up beautifully for Chelsea. So he will get a 5th yellow card at some point. And so that's
Right.
something to just be mindful of. Whereas Trent, you have just no obstacles to him getting starts at this point with Connor Bradley still injured. So I just think Trent is kind of the safer long-term pick. I think it's probably pretty tight, actually, who scores more points. But again, I am wearing my Chelsea hat and my Chelsea bias on my sleeve per usual. So, yeah, I think that's pretty tough. But I think Trent, it's a more essential position to fill because there's less good defenders this season. So Trent is clearly one of those where there are a plethora of good attackers that you can pick from.
Yeah, fair enough. We'll certainly be in touch on the DMs, try and figure this all out for me so I can hopefully get my best overall finish And you're a big contributor to that, Bucks. You bounce a lot of ideas back to me, and then I sometimes I poo poo them, other times I agree. So hopefully
Who's the
that
captain
will
going to be,
continue.
Brian? Who's your captain for game week 18, midweek footy?
Captaincy, wow. I mean, kind of just have to keep it on Mo Salah. Holy crap! I think I was listening to Praz earlier as well. He thinks that it's even a potential triple captain shout if you think Salah is going to play 75 minutes because of how juicy this fixture looks. I'm going to keep my powder dry though and keep my chip for later. But I mean, Mo Salah should get at least 12 to 13 points in this match, right? At home in front of the crowd. The only thing is if he rests, but I don't think he's going to rest. He's got an understanding with Slot that he starts. Maybe he'll come off early, but he starts.
Yeah, I think he's solidly the top captaincy option. And I think that if you're at all concerned about him getting rested, I'm actually my bus team. I have Trent as my vice captain. That's how confident I am that Liverpool are just going to put Leicester to the sword. Now, my transfer plans are a little less sexy because I used my banked free transfers last game week. I only have one free transfer. I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going Saka to Luis Diaz. I'm going to keep the
Ooh,
faith that Liverpool are going to stay hot. And the fixtures coming up are pretty juicy. Like you said, Leicester, West Ham, and Manchester United. I think he gets at least 2 goals and 1 assist between those 3 game weeks. I don't know how they come, but I'm going to bet on his overall talent and the Liverpool attack upside. And my
interesting,
captain is
interesting.
Salah. So I'll be on a Liverpool triple up. I cannot worry about the ass man, assistant manager, stupid ass chip in game week 18 when the earliest I could use it is game week 24. I will be using transfers between now and then. And I'm in a rank position where everything is about chasing upside. And
Yeah,
I can't just sit on my hands with only 2 Liverpool players when their fixtures are so juicy for the next stretch run. So I feel like I need to go in on their attack in a big way. And so I will be sitting with just one Arsenal starter. That's kind of the dark side of the coin when it comes to game week 13. When it comes to game week 18. And so that's a calculated risk that I'm going to take. And I think Liverpool, they have a slightly better fixture. So I think they're going to get the slightly better FPL result. I'm hopeful there. What do you
yeah,
think?
fair enough. I think there aren't going to be many managers who have Arsenal attack this week, so it's more so double defense is going to be super popular, and they'll probably clean Ipswich. So going with Diaz, that was one of the biggest misses I had on my wild card 6 this year, and I went trying to find a little bit of the point chasing from all of his double digit hauls earlier in the season, but I think he's as good of a upside pick as there is right now. So Liverpool can score 4+ goals. He can surely grab one of them and get you 10 points this midweek fixture.
Now, Brian, just want to ask, do you think it makes sense for me to dangle an idea of a -4 hit to bring in someone like Saliba to get on that Arsenal double defense?
Wow. I mean, I kind of prefer Timber and save 0.6 million or whatever it is, but it's not a bad shout because they when you go into every match and you're going to have Gabriel, Saliba, and Trent, you're just set for the foreseeable future. And that's been part of my strategy is not making many defensive transfers. So that part is definitely tempting. I would think that he would get 6 points in this upcoming match. So yeah, I don't hate it. I guess you have those extra funds as well, right? So it'd be
Yeah,
easy to upgrade. Who would you upgrade?
I'd probably go Rico Lewis to an
Yeah,
Arsenal defender. Now, the
that's pretty
quirk
nice.
that
That's a
I'm
big
having,
upgrade.
right, is I also have Verbruggen, and he's been bringing me down recently,
Oh my God,
more
Brighton.
than
Ugh.
more than keeping any damn clean sheets or points. So I'm definitely tempted about a hit to get in a double Arsenal defense setup. Um, it's just it seems silly to take a hit for defenders in a season where so few teams are actually getting clean sheets. But if I just flip the way I'm thinking about it, and I'm taking the -4 to move Saka out, who's not going to play for a Liverpool attacker, it actually feels a little bit better. So maybe I just
Yeah,
need
fair
to
enough. Fair
switch my
enough.
perspective there.
Are you going to hold Diaz until double game week 24 or 25, which is likely where the rescheduled match between Everton and Liverpool will fall? Is that your plan? Or is that a spot in your team that could be more flexible? Because if you are thinking about maybe jumping on and off of him, then you could really actually look at Allison in goal as well, because he's going to be starting all of these matches. It's not as, you'd have to pick a different midfielder with upside, but just wanted to throw that out there too, just thinking about those upcoming doubles.
Now, if I'm going to make a defensive move, it's going to be to bring in another Arsenal player, not
Okay.
a Liverpool player. I watch a lot of these games. I think that's the kind of manager I am. I love FPL because it brings me even deeper into my love of the Premier League. So I watch a lot of these games. And if I don't watch the whole game, I watch the extended highlight. I'm a sicko. It was 0-0. I watched the extended highlight of Southampton, Fulham. Best part of that match was those pink kits. And now I'm a two-time girl dad. Those were some beauties on the Southampton lads. They looked like shit playing in them because they are
Got
the
one of their
worst
best
team in the
results
league.
of the season. A draw, a 0-0 draw for Southampton. That's a Christmas present in itself to anybody who's a fan of the Saints.
Oh, they're such a painful watch, and they didn't even get a new manager bounce because they decided not to bring in a new manager just yet. So maybe that's coming to surprise the Hammers in game week 18 if they actually bring in a coach, those cheap bastards that run that team. Now, with that, the reason I bring that up is because if you watch the games, Arsenal, they are not keeping clean sheets as of yet, but from everything on the pitch, all the analytics, you watch it, they're really conceding like a half chance or 2/3 of a chance every match when they do concede. And those happen to go in versus when they happen to not. So I'm still most confident that Arsenal are the best defense in the league. So that's why I think triple up on Liverpool with two of their attackers is more optimal for my chasing strategy. And that's why I'm kind of leaning towards, if I take a hit, it'll be to bring in an Arsenal defender and a Liverpool
Okay.
attacker. That's how I'm feeling.
And who right now you have Hall starting? Is that who you're comparing that third defensive slot with?
So he's my preferred third choice. Now, actually, in my bus team, and I think this will be for good perspective. Right now, I just have Saka being benched, and I have a 4-3-3 with four defenders. Now, the reason I have that is because Man City play Everton at home. And this is a great match for home teams because Arsenal, Man City, Newcastle, Liverpool, Chelsea, they all have home matches. So it's kind of
Yeah, I
like
forgot. I
lined
forgot
up.
that. I forgot that City plays Everton at home. I would not take the hit. Just you can do it next week, but Everton, how many goals have they scored this season? Not
Yeah, they
not many,
stink.
not many. Especially with Dwight McNeil not putting in crosses, and I avoid the hit this week, but that plan for that to be a future move that'll really shore up your defense.
Now, what about if I told you that my bench has Greaves, Bergvall, and an injured Saka on it? So I might, if I don't take the hit, I might. And Rico Lewis is benched. I
Oh
might
my
just be lining
goodness.
up for a more punishment in the
We
FPL
might
game.
get some more. We might get some team news on if Rico's going to play again. So that's your own personal hell to be in, Bucks, with the defenders like that on your team.
Yes, we wish you nothing but good blessing and cheer this holiday season. Don't be like Bucks and be in a fearful position going into the midweek of FPL. This is a joyous time to celebrate with your loved ones. Get some green arrows and get some FPL hauls. With that, I'm Bucks in Brooklyn. That's my podcast co-host Brian out in sunny California. We hope that you have lots of blessings to end out 2024. That way we can start 2025 with an even bigger green arrow to come in the new year. Brian,
Well said,
all
Bucks.
love.
Well said. And you know, the season that you're having, you could be a Grinch, but you come up on this podcast time and time again, much like when I was having just shocking year last season. And we do it for the love of our fans and those who support us. So we really appreciate all of you who tune into this podcast each and every week and engage with us. So it really gets us more involved with the community and definitely enjoying 2024 and 2025. It's going to be a doozy, Bucks. Can't wait to tackle it head on with you.
No, it's going to be a dandy. It could always be worse. We could be Wolverhampton Wanderers supporters. Just remember that,
You're
Brian.
coming off of 3 points. Don't rub that in Dan's face to end the pod.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you on Sunday for another episode. Again, make sure to set your bus team. This is a Thursday deadline. Do not get caught out having too much to drink and too many presents to open on your Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Christmaka, anything you celebrate. Make sure you set your FPL lineup first.